Welcome to Encouragement for Living Life with Lockwood and Lockwood. The guys are here to encourage you in your attempt to live more confidently and successfully in our world. They are highly trained and experienced mental health professionals, but they are not your mental health professional. They're sharing encouragement through information and discussion. People are complex. Just because an idea helps one person doesn't mean it will help someone else. You need to consult with your own professional who will hopefully know what is best for you and your situation. Now, it's time for Lockwood and Lockwood.
We want our audience, we want you guys to know we are very experienced mental health addiction professionals. We are not your psychiatrist, psychotherapist, counselor, psychologist, psychoanalyst, substance abuse counselor, or your health coach, etc. We are sharing encouragement through information and discussion. You need to consult your licensed professional when trying to address mental health/addiction issues. Just because an idea helps one person does not mean it will help someone else. People are complex. Your own professional will hopefully know what is best for you in your situation.
Yeah, I think
Sound good?
people are complex is extremely important for sure.
Amen. Right on. Okay. So how about let's do some introductions too? How about me try and introduce you? Let's see how you do introducing me.
Okay. Sure.
All right. All my cheat sheets here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is how I describe you, son.
Okay.
A lot of knowledge, well read, PsyD psychologist. You know, have supervised intensive outpatient programs for dual diagnosis, addiction/mental health. Consult with organizations and treatment programs. Business coach for professionals. Supervision of doctoral level clinicians. Professor in clinical psychology graduate school program. Part owner in a number of small businesses. And got to listen to the old man talk to many recovering alcoholics when you were growing up.
Perhaps most importantly, yeah.
That may be the most important one, yes. And you have the same gift that your father has, which is to be able to listen and look at people and understand things and see things other people can't see.
Right.
And that's really important. Now, you want to take a whack at me? I'll help you if you need it.
Yeah, sure. Let's see how much help I need. So, you are a very seasoned psychotherapist with extensive psychoanalytic training. I don't think you would call yourself a psychoanalyst, but you have extensive training
Right.
and extensive practice working with people in a deep way about long-term chronic issues that are hard to resolve with short-term therapies. You have extensive experience working with people with severe personality pathology, severe trauma, and severe substance use disorders. You have extensive experience for decades helping people see complicated layers to their interpersonal difficulties, the way they see themselves, the way they experience themselves, the way they experience the world. And because of that, you've also been helpful as a clinical supervisor at an outpatient program in your local area as well for a very long time. What, 20 years?
Probably
Longer?
about 25. Yeah.
25 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have extensive experience as both an individual psychotherapist as well as a clinical supervisor of an outpatient program. You're also a person who has extensive long-term recovery and know what that's like from the spiritual perspective and the colloquial kind of personal perspective. And you're a man of faith, and I think that matters. I don't think that it's irrelevant. I think it's relevant. And so because of all of those factors, you have a unique perception on human suffering and more importantly, as the subtitle says, you have a unique perspective on why encouragement is so important, both from the clinical perspective, the recovery perspective, and the faith perspective.
Damn, son. Well said. God, you must do that for a living.
I do speak for a living.
I know. I can tell. That was really cool. Nice. Really, really nice. Thoughtful. Okay. Well, you can tell I'm not like that. I don't speak for a living. I was sitting there the other day and I was thinking about how many sessions have I done over the last, I've been in my practice 42 years for
Uh,
people that want to know what you were talking about. And I guesstimate, and it's a guesstimate because it's hard to tell without
Yeah.
looking back at records. I've done probably around 50 to 60,000 sessions
Yeah.
over the last 42 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that would make sense to me. I mean, you see a lot of people and you work long hours, which, here in
I
Los Angeles, a lot of people don't work long hours. They'd like a simple 9 to 5 life or 8 to 4 or 10 to 2 for some people. So, it's different.
well, now I'm actually more like them.
Well, you're also not as young as you used to be. So,
Correct. That is correct. When they put a new knee in this winter, well, that's one verification of a lot of basketball and running in my life.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, should we touch on what the kind of things that we're going to touch on and talk about for
Yeah,
people?
totally. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think would be most helpful?
Well, some things that I came up with off the top of my head when I was going through this. Obviously, we're going to talk about mental health and addiction problems, right?
Sure.
But I think it's real important this in this day and age to talk about fear and insecurity. I mean, there's a rampant fear and insecurity running around in the world right now, and I think people want to feel more secure. They want to know that they're going to be okay and that they are okay.
Yeah.
You know, and we want to help people know that they can get the help that they need. I have this firm belief. People that know me know I insist on people getting what they need.
Mm.
I just part of my mentality because of what I went through, and
Sure.
it's important for people to know there's all kind of resources and a lot of different kinds, and a lot of them help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And don't ever give up when you're looking. If you haven't gotten help,
Yeah.
keep looking and find people that can help point you in the right direction. I believe in that strongly. You know,
I think just on that point, real quick, one thing I've
yeah,
noticed on in my world here in Los Angeles is I see two kinds of extremes because I've mostly worked in the treatment industry directly and not necessarily as just a therapist.
right.
So one thing I've noticed is there are people that are constantly help seeking. They have become institutionalized and they're accustomed to just being taken care of as opposed to individuating and developing autonomy at some point. And that's a different problem, I think, compared to what you're describing, which is the vast majority of people on the planet, I think, are on the opposite side of the spectrum, where generally speaking, they either don't seek out help, they don't know how to seek out help, they don't understand the types of help that are available, or they just have one visit with one mental health professional and they're like, well, that wasn't particularly helpful. And they just kind of move on. So I think there's kind of two ends of the spectrum here with regard to help seeking and the help they need. And unfortunately, I just live on the other end where there's a pathological relationship with treatment and rehab, and people don't want to grow up and they just want to let their insurance take care of them for the rest of their life, kind of thing. So I see both, and I just see more of the other. That's my bias, unfortunately.
Well, can we come back to that? Because I have some things to share about that. Because
Yeah,
yeah,
of
you're
course.
right. But other things to talk about are like surrender versus self will, shelves that are littered with self help books and why they don't work, mental health and addiction treatment, 12-step programs and other self help programs. And whatever people want to email us, they can email us at lockwoodwithlockwood@gmail.com. And if you have a question, please email us and we will try and respond to that question as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And hopefully give you some kind of a understanding that might help you.
Yeah.
But people that seem to not want to grow up, I remember I was over at the St. Louis. I'm in St. Louis, by the way, folks. You said a number of times you're in LA. I should say where I am also. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And I was over at the Analytic Institute. Not that I'm a great reader, as you know, but I was looking through their literature and I stumbled across this literature on kids with what they call a borderline attachment. That's not a borderline diagnosis, borderline personality disorder. It's not that. But it's kids who become attached by acting stuck and broken.
Yeah.
So on the surface, we call it infantilization. We have a bunch of big terms for it, but what it means is that the attachment reinforced acting stuck and broken as a way to get love.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids like that, and they grow into adulthood, I call become marginal people in the world often because they're stuck. And when I've done evaluations on these young adults and these adolescents, I've never met one once they understood what was going on with them that said, "Yeah, I want to stay stuck in the basement of my parents' house."
Yeah.
They don't. They don't. Or adults that are in similar positions, they want to be okay. They want to thrive. They want to grow up. But it's an attachment that can be very, very sticky to deal with.
Yeah, I would agree it's extremely sticky and complicated. And so for me, because of, again, the industry that I've spent most of my career in, unfortunately, you know, one of the layers that's very hard to unstick with people is the layer of access to resources. Because I've dealt with people who are middle class or lower middle class. And so, on the one hand, autonomy is extremely important. I think you and I share the same philosophy there, which is like, your job is to grow up and do whatever it is that you're meant to do on this planet, whatever, with whoever, in whatever way. And so the problem I have with the treatment industry, the rehab world, I call it Rehabistan. That's my phrase for it. The problem with Rehabistan is that when you're dealing with people with less resources, fewer resources, money, access to family and healthy social support, so on and so forth, is that staying stuck is actually incentivized, right? So it's incentivized for you to stay sick. In many of these communities, there's a lot to say about this topic, which I'm sure we could probably spend hours on. And just a little preview for people is, on the systemic side of things, which can be overcome, by the way. I'm not saying it's hopeless. I'm just saying it's like these are real forces that people have a hard time negotiating that I've observed directly for 15 years. Um, one of the real forces is you have treatment professionals who talk to you like you're stupid and you're broken, basically, and that you have to rigidly do something to get better, right? And so they enforce perfectionism, or they enforce a brokenness, right? A stuckness in you, the way they talk to you and deal with you. But a separate problem, but it's related to it, is some of the subcultures of the recovery world out here, not all of them, there's great people in recovery too, but some of the subcultures also reinforce the stuckness and the brokenness. They don't understand experiences, strength, and hope. They don't focus on that in their recovery experience. They focus on the drugalogs. They focus on the tragedy of their behavior and how shameful they still are, and they live in shame. And so, because of that, there are a few systemic forces that have to be reckoned with for people to get the help they need if they're stuck in these systems that I'm describing. A lot of people aren't, but the subset of people that are, it's going to
I
be
know.
harder for them.
Well, one of the things I did with the program that I worked with, I supervised the treatment of the kids. I helped the staff, the counselors, because their substance abuse counselors are not highly trained people.
Sure.
And what I'd help them do is not give a lot of attention when their clients would struggle or fail, and give them attention when they've done things that activate their real self, the part of them that wants to be okay. And that did a lot of good if they could be consistent, because to sit there and counsel someone who is attached by being stuck, the counseling feels like love
Yeah.
and they just stay stuck.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
changing that way of approach, I said, these are unique people. You cannot treat them the same way you can treat other people.
so this is a joke that probably very few people will get unless they're in our profession in some way, but like John Watson would be extremely proud of you for what you just said, because what you just described is what the behavior is called shaping, where you only positively reinforce the good behavior and you don't punish, you just ignore the bad behavior, the behavior you don't want to exist.
Well, for parents out there who are listening, or kids, or people that have this particular kind of issue, it's real important to find someone who really understands the kind of attachment issue that you have.
Hmm.
Because if they don't, they could treat you forever because you will cling to them, and you could be treated forever and not get out of the basement, not really activate your life and grow and be okay and get what you really want from life. Because remember, I've never met a kid like this when I explained the pathology to him that said, "Yeah, I want to be stuck and broken." They don't.
Y-
They want
Yeah,
to be okay.
I think that is another topic that you and I could probably spend some time on is like pathological dependency on mental health professionals because obviously I'm very different than you in this regard. I have a very low tolerance for people seeing me forever. That bothers me in so many ways because I almost I almost universally believe that if you really want to see me for multiple years, there's probably something we could have seen earlier, number 1, and dealt with earlier and quicker. And number 2, you are probably not that it's necessarily malingering or secondary gain or something, but you're probably getting something out of the relationship with me that you probably can be getting from other people.
Well,
If
there are
I'm
a lot of that would be in our area, my area, we kind of called countertransference,
Mhm.
which anybody that does intensive psychedelic work with people has to be aware of countertransference.
Exactly.
Using somebody because a lot of the people I treat were used.
Yeah,
They're usable.
they're in
So
that role.
you have to be very careful that what you're doing is really helping them to truly grow and become more autonomous.
But I also think there's a lot of therapists that like having a captive audience. I genuinely
Well,
believe.
look, there's a lot of people out there. We want to focus on the good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there to do a lot of good,
Yeah.
but sometimes there's cases that are really complicated, and people can get stuck in a treatment and cycle through treatments over and over again and not really get what they need. One of the reasons I started my practice was I saw people in AA relapsing,
Yeah.
and I'm going, why do they relapse? Why have I not? Why have other people not relapsed? Because I got 45 years of continuous sobriety. And why are these people relapsing? I realized that as I got more information and grew more as a clinician, that there's a lot of complex reasons why people don't really settle down into a good recovery and grow.
Mhm, yeah.
Well, some people stay sober, but they don't grow either.
No, they're sober and miserable.
Yeah, I sponsored one of those for a while. It's like, my goodness, he would go to meetings, stayed physically clean and sober, but his life was a wreck.
Spiritually not sober.
Yeah, it's just really hard on people. We want to help people. I mean, I made a career out of trying to help people. They have really complex stuff that most people could never dent treatment
Y-
wise,
Yeah.
and really help them to get on track. And frankly, that's my story. My story is that complicated and that difficult. And, you know a lot about my story and, in a long road for me to build the kind of life that I have today. I'm very blessed to have the life I have today and it got a lot of good help to get there.
Mm. Boy, I think that's a moral of the story that a lot of people probably either take for granted or just can't see is that there are very few success cases in any culture where you just do everything yourself. I think the United States in particular is a little more individualistic, which I appreciate and respect. And at the same time, like it literally takes a village for us to have a good life. And I think you and I are both examples of that. I was literally at this conference yesterday, and Angela Chanter was there, and she is one of my closest friends, mentors. Her husband, John, may he rest in peace, is like one of those people in my life too. And there's like a half dozen people that I can say without them, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. You're obviously one of them as well, you know? And so it's literally impossible to have the life that you deserve, I think, if you're just trying to do things on self-will or with your intellect or with your talents, because your intellect and your talents can definitely get you a long way, but you have to have people and you have to have people who, like we're talking about, can encourage you, can see you, can help you feel understood, can help you stay accountable to your goals and your principles. And
Right.
it's a heavy lift finding your tribe, and it doesn't happen quickly. Some of us, sometimes it takes luck, like it was just straight up luck that Angela and John were in my life for those years, and she's still in my life, you know?
Some of us would believe that's not luck for you, bud.
Yes, I'm trying to appeal to the other 75% of the population, you know what I mean? But,
I got
it's like there's a reality, which is people really have to be patient when they're struggling, because there's a lot that you can do individually when you're struggling, and also luck is a variable that you can't control, right? Whether it's faith or whether it's God or whether it's luck, it doesn't even matter. We can't control God, we can't control faith, we can't control luck. It is our job to do the best we can with what we know, obviously, and be patient for our circumstances to change, because we can't, like, I couldn't have told you I was going to run into John and Angela. I as smart as I am or whatever, I couldn't have told you. Just would never have been able to predict in a million years.
Remember how that one worked out? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the fact that it worked out is in and of itself a miracle, because so many people in my profession, this is just like how important like patience is. Like, so many people in my profession don't even have a good professional mentor while they're in grad school or even on their pre-doc or postdoc internship. They just have to get through it to get their hours and all this stuff. And they never really meet that person that encourages them and sees them in their whole self, not just their professional skills and traits, so it really is luck. I'm blessed,
Okay, well, stick to the more the blessing side, okay? You tend to run we'll edit this, you tend to run either you got a lot of anger
It's not anger,
about
buddy.
yeah, well, passion maybe, but
There's a practical reality which you may not be aware of because you've only lived in your little circle there. I've had the privilege of living in a giant city, interacting with hundreds of grad students. So what I'm talking about is the real data. I'm not trying to be angry or mean about the industry. It's just a fact that there's a lot of randomness, and many people who are doing their best are not the right fit for you. And it's literally the case that people need to be patient, because they might want to have a good experience in grad school, at their pre-doc or postdoc or residency or whatever, but that's not something you can necessarily control.
well, I know. My example would be at WashU, we got some basic education in my master's program,
Sure.
but I got very little training in actually doing psychotherapy until I went to the St. Louis Psychoanalytic Institute.
Sure.
That's an extensive 2-year program where you're in supervision twice a week and you read volumes of material and you're in class for 3 hours once a week.
Sure.
That's a 2-year program, big commitment,
Yeah.
and then supervision probably for, I don't know how many years after that with Dr. Simon, a psychoanalyst who's just a really cool guy, but very, very smart. He's a chess player that can see eight moves ahead. I can see about 3. So I learned a lot from him. He's also very respectful of what I knew,
Awesome.
and anyway, so I try and focus now on how do we make it better? How do we help people get to where they need to go?
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
just met with a gal that has an office across the hall from me. She's brand new here, and what is she doing and how is she doing it? And I'm sure she helps a lot of people. So we
Yeah.
need people to keep looking if what they're doing doesn't work. Because even the people that cycle through programs like you're talking about, and people cycle through the program I worked with, and I got burned out listening to all the horrible cases of kids that needed real intensive work and couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we had to refer them to the Institute Low Fee Clinic,
Yeah.
and that's a good place to start for some kids. Other kids just regular counseling, and maybe eventually they can do some more intensive things if they need to.
Yeah.
But you try and cobble together what I have a friend that's a great example. I have a friend that never went to counseling after he got sober, and he had a hell of a childhood, man. He went through a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, but over through the years with good AA sponsorship, he learned how to actually be married, keep a job, you know what I'm saying, and then deal with some really heavy stuff that came medically in his life that he's been going through for years. And
Mm.
that's without a lot of professional help. It can be done. I
Yeah.
don't
I think
recommend it to people, but it can be done.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other super positive things that we can try to emphasize for people over and over again is you and I collectively probably know hundreds of people who got a better life, felt better, etc., with no professional help whatsoever. So, as much as you and I both are pro therapy for people who need it, I think it's also the case that there's just a lot of ordinary, regular life stuff that's super important for people to understand and take advantage of
Yeah,
so they can have the
but
life they deserve.
but remember, I also know because of my experience with AA of guys that I loved who are dead from their addiction because they never got outside help,
Hmm.
the right kind,
Yeah.
and they're dead today. Good people.
Yeah.
There's marriages destroy their careers and then dead.
Sure. Yeah. I know some people like that as well. There's a couple of, in fact, I was on this panel yesterday with a professional named Mel McCracken, and Mel is a kind of an executive at a program that was similar to one of the ones I used to run. And so, because LA is a tiny little community, even though it's 20 plus million people, it's still a tiny little community in terms of the treatment industry. And so sometimes you try to help somebody, it doesn't go so well. One of your friends that owns a similar kind of spot, you'll try to help them too. So we shared this case years ago. Lovely young man, unfortunately died by suicide. And he's just like a brilliant soul, a nice kid, a smart kid, came from a pretty good family, but just had just profound self-hatred. And some of that's sexuality, some of that's trauma, some of that's all the stuff you and I know about. And this kid, Mel and I both tried extremely hard, both with him in the recovery community out here and with his family to try and like wrap around the whole system and kind of, you know, do our best. And despite being very competent and capable people, man, we couldn't get through to him. There wasn't the right luck or circumstance or whatever, however you want to see it, just like he couldn't let people care about him. And so I firmly resonate with what you're saying is the reason I share that story because like so many good people that die by suicide and drugs and violence don't need to die, you know? Also, thank God that that's rare. Like
Right.
thankfully
Right.
suicide is extremely rare. I know people are panicking about it or whatever, but like it's actually not that common a problem,
No,
you know?
but there may be people listening to us that have been suicidal and
Sure.
or have attempted suicide, and I know that I very quickly and some thoughts about that for people out there and their families too. It's impossible to feel hopeless unless you have felt helpless first. When I deal with someone who's suicidal, the first thing I deal with is the helplessness that they feel. When
Mm,
they don't feel like they have any power to act on themselves or their environment to make things better. You get rid of helplessness, hopelessness begins to go away.
mm.
And then suicide begins to go away. Unless people keep suicide there just to ruminate on it, just to know they can escape if they need to. These are people never would commit suicide.
Yeah, that's a different problem. In fact, in those cases, the literature is very clear. You don't try to address the SI because it's a coping skill, basically.
Right.
Um, Yeah, I think the point you're making about helplessness is I think probably going to fly over many people's heads because you're right, I would agree. The problem is people don't really fully understand helplessness, I think. I think that it's maybe a visceral thing for some people, it's a cognitive thing for other people. But just to reiterate very clearly, like helplessness is very hard to see sometimes because it can manifest. It can be a quiet little voice in the back of your head. It can be infused into
Yeah.
pieces of your personality if you have the right kind of developmental misattunements or even trauma. So, there's a lot of different ways that helplessness can show up, and it can be
Yeah.
covered by a thick layer of hopelessness. And so it's easy to get not distracted, but like it's easy to focus on the hopelessness because someone looks profoundly like they're in psychological pain. And so normal empathy dictates that, like, you know, deal with the psychological pain because that's the biggest emotional red flag in front of you. But the real problem, like you're saying, is the helplessness that helped create a foundation for the hopelessness, right? If you want to think of it from
Well,
that metaphor.
yeah, and if we're talking to family members here that have a child or a relative who has experienced suicidal ideation or have made attempts, it's probably helpful to know that a lot when you feel hopeless, it's impossible to feel hopeless unless you have felt helpless for a long time, very periods of time that are too long for that person to feel helpless.
Yeah.
So if you see a layer of hopelessness, know helplessness is underneath it. Just know that's there and then go look for it and try and address it. And I don't want to speak for mental health professionals. I want families to understand that there's hope for people that are the most suicidal, the most damaged, that if they're understood correctly and get the right kind of help, they can grow and become people that feel better about themselves and build the kind of life that they would want to have.
Yeah. I completely agree. There's always hope. 100%. Also, for especially family members, spouses, whatever, like you're under no obligation to fully understand these things or even see these things. I think that a lot of people feel extra pressure to like fix their kid, fix their spouse, whatever. But the truth of the matter is that what you and I are talking about can be very, very complex, you know, and it can be subtle enough that it's easy to misinterpret in like dozens and dozens of ways. So no one should ever feel guilty or ashamed because I didn't understand well enough. But like, it's not your job to understand. It's your job to be
Right.
a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a dad or mom or aunt, whatever. Like, it's only up to us, the professionals, to actually see these things and talk about them clearly enough that the patient can feel understood. And if we're wrong, then we can move on to the next good idea, right? But you're right. Like the vast majority of people that are chronically suicidal or who just have intense self hatred, there's something that's concrete there that is workable.
Well, you,
9.9 times out of 10.
yeah, you jumped into a heavy area there, and it was suicide too, I guess, but not necessarily intending to do that on our first podcast. But let's talk about self hatred.
Yeah.
And the solution to what I call shame, technically shame, shame is I am bad or I'm defective or I hate myself, I'm a piece of
Right.
shit, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call whatever words people use.
Yeah.
Shame is an overall sense of badness or defectiveness. Guilt is I did the wrong thing and I should feel guilty for that action.
Yeah.
Really important to understand the difference. But to get to shame, a lot of people in this world are carrying a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And boy, can it be destructive as heck. But the
Yeah.
solution, I give my patients two solutions.
Mm.
One is a very quick something that they can do to work on it, which is no one is defective or bad. So how do people come to believe that they're defective or bad?
Sure.
Well, when kids are growing up, and things go wrong, either by not getting what they need emotionally, relationally, or by something bad happening, like abuse, profound neglect, emotional neglect, things like that.
Yeah.
If a kid hurts long enough and no one steps in to go, hey, look, I'm sorry this is happening. We're going to work on this and get you help. I'm sorry that I hurt you.
Yeah.
If people feel hurt long enough, all by itself, hurt turns into I hurt, I'm bad. Something's wrong with me because no one ever addressed what was hurting them.
Right.
And when it turns into something's wrong with me and it continues to go on, and we're talking about months or years of this usually,
Mhm.
then it turns into intense self hatred
Mm.
or what I call technically shame. We want to keep guilt, we want to get rid of shame. So the first thing I give people is an explanation of how shame develops. You don't need to read a whole book on it.
Yeah.
It's really simple to me. You feel bad long enough, no one ever intervenes to help you feel better. You're going to eventually feeling bad turns into I'm bad. All by itself cognitively. Unless you're an adolescent, late adolescent, you're not going to know the difference. You're not going to understand it. It's just going to happen to you. And it can manifest in a lot of ways behaviorally, but
Mm.
that's how shame develops. So the first solution is to understand it so you can fight back and tell yourself, I'm not bad or defective. I was just hurt a lot or I
Mm.
didn't get what I needed, whatever the case may be. but I'm not bad, and they can fight back cognitively. Now, the long-term solution to this, well, I don't know if it'll surprise you, but the long-term solution is unconditional love or regard. It's impossible to feel defective or bad when you feel unconditionally loved. Unconditional love is the real solution to shame. And in treatment, the goal is for my patients to come to believe, which is true because I love everybody that walks in here. I don't necessarily like everybody the same way, but I love everybody who walks into my office, and they need to come to believe that they are loved unconditionally, that they don't have to do a damn thing, perform a damn thing for them to deserve to be loved. And when they feel that and can take that in, shame dramatically goes down. And I've seen this over and over again in my office, and I've experienced it in my own life
Yeah.
too, you know? And so for people to get there sometimes takes a route to get there to trust enough to let in that, you know? I
Yeah.
just had a guy just yesterday, he was getting to the bottom of things. I mean, he was finding that he never believed he was unconditionally loved. And then the next session, he's jumps to some more practical stuff. He got scared, because it's like, boy, I might get disappointed or hurt again. So he kind of backed away and we see it and he said, "Yeah, I appreciate you. Finally, somebody understands me
Yeah.
and what I've gone through." And that's all the beginning of someone actually feeling an unconditional sense of regard or caring or what I call love. And I'm not afraid to use that word.
Yeah.
What do you think, son?
Yeah, I just got so many thoughts because there's a couple of things that I disagree with and obviously a number of things I agree with. So on the disagreement side of things, the first thing, which is kind of like lower hanging fruit in this conversation, is use the phrase fight back. So I'm sure you
Right.
have a specific intention there. For
Right.
me, I genuinely, but this is just because you and I are different, I think, in our temperament. I think I would probably never say the phrase fight back to people or even use the metaphor. And I think the reason's because when I hear the word fight, what I think is you're trying to motivate pathological energy to protect yourself. And so what I don't believe is true philosophically is I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that you have to fight. I don't think that's necessary. I think that what most people struggle to do is understand and accept.
Well,
Right.
son, if you want to be technical, and I don't really use the phrase with them fight back,
Sure.
it's really empathy. Empathy is correct understanding. And if you understand how shame develops, you can have empathy for yourself for feeling so bad.
I think that that's probably going to be a second place where we disagree. I think empathy is part of the problem because empathy is not a very sophisticated mechanism. We are not that sophisticated, unfortunately, especially as infants when people are hurt the most or the easiest, I guess you could say. So, empathy is unfortunately a very dumb mechanism. It's like a butter knife, not like a scalpel. And because of that, people will rely on, in my experience, they will rely on their gut reaction to things and their presuppositions about what the person is intending, and they're going to call it empathy. And the problem is that empathy is always about you and how your brain has been constructed by life and your experience and your personality and stuff. And so you're not living in someone else's shoes. There's no neuroscience research that says we
No, 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 no.
live.
I want my patients to have empathy for themselves.
They can't.
They
This is where
can't.
this is where you and I fundamentally disagree.
So all this stuff I'm doing with people that works all these years can't happen.
I'm not saying it can't happen. What I'm saying is you're correct
That's
about
interesting.
you're correct about a process, but you're not correct about the underlying thing. That's all. So you're correct about the process of them learning to tolerate misattunements. They're learning to tolerate moments where the outside world hurts them, right? So people are learning to tolerate moments of disconnection, learning to tolerate moments of feeling ashamed and reframe them and see them differently, internalize them differently, learning to look at this self concept and change it over time, right? To be cognitive.
Well, that language is fine, but that's more of a professor's language than mine.
I'm just telling you, like, I'm being honest, right? So my honest
You are a professor.
for sure. My honest opinion is people are not actually, let's put it this way. They're not using empathy for themselves in my experience. What they're doing is they're reframing their experience from how they used to experience it. But their core self-concept usually doesn't change in many of
Slow down, son, because you're technically, I'm sure you're right. And by the way, folks, I get in the mud with people for years and help them grow. This is a guy that can explain it to you better than I can. Okay, I'm going to be challenged regularly on this podcast by my own son because of all the stuff he knows. But I'll guarantee you, people that can we would call reframe often can give them relief emotionally.
yeah, totally,
I
100%.
I did that. Well, that's all I was really saying with different words. And
Yeah,
it may
yeah.
not be technically correct, but my patients understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, it's not to dismiss what you're doing, it's to say that I wouldn't hang my hat on empathy. That's an old school way of looking at it, which is not wrong technically, but it's not the correct mechanism, essentially.
No,
Let's
I got it. Don't get too heady here. We're talking to regular folks. Remember that.
No, I know, but, like, a lot of people but what I'm saying is, like, a lot of people think of empathy as, like, I have the ability to understand how you feel because I've been through that too. Like, I was sad because someone died in my life, so I know what it's like for you to be sad. The truth is you actually don't, though.
No, no,
Right.
no. That was not what I was talking about at all. I was talking about them understanding accurately what happened to them that created shame,
Yeah.
so that they can talk to themselves in a way that'll help them understand they're not really bad, even though they feel like they are.
Yeah, absolutely, and,
Yeah,
you and I are
that's
both
that.
in agreement about that for sure.
Yeah, that's
I just
really what I was talking about.
yeah,
So
empathy for yourself.
I know I'm going to get a lot of these intellectual explanations of what I say.
It's just I don't want it to be the word empathy for myself because it's like saying, just to make a comparison that's a little silly, it's like saying, I have understanding of my understanding. It's like you
No,
kind of,
I understand what you're saying. Just
yeah,
remember, we're talking to lay people,
yeah, yeah.
and
Like,
that's what you said is great for your students.
but it's also simple to say reframe. We're going to take this experience and look at it differently. It's reframing,
Right.
which is like a
Well,
CBT skill. Yeah.
right. For the folks who are listening, this is kind of what you're probably going to get. And our goal is to try and help you understand that people can understand you, even stuff that's really tough that you're going through or that
Yeah.
you've gone through.
Yeah. The stuff
There are
that's
people that
simple.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
subtle.
And yeah, and we want you to know there's hope.
Yeah.
I'm a picture of that. I can tell you that for thousands and thousands of AA meetings, sponsoring numerous people. I'm just going to tell you that's there. If I mess up, it's not about AA, it's about me. You know what I'm saying? So understand that there's a lot of ways to help people grow, and we want people to know that there's ways to understand things that maybe no one else ever helped you understand. What we're saying may not apply to you too. Remember that.
Yeah.
Remember that you need your own mental health professional to, if you hear something that makes sense to you, it clicks with you, run it by your mental health professional. Make sure that it's accurate for your case, your situation. So you're not led astray by what we are saying, because we want to be mainly an encouragement and provide some way of looking at things that you may not have thought about before. And believe me, we're two people that can do that. We listen at a level that my gift is to listen, watch, and see and understand what others have not been able to do
Mhm.
with people, and then work with that and help people grow and feel better. And my son is going to be more technical and hold me accountable if I use the wrong language to describe what's going on,
I
because he has my gift and that gift. I don't have that gift. I'm not a great reader.
well, I hate reading. I've told you this before. I can't, it is boring as snot to me. However,
But
I
you'll
will
do it
do
though.
it. I will do it because I want to know. I really want to fully understand.
No,
I
me
have,
too.
I have my intuitions about things like you do, which I think is fairly well tuned. But if I get the right new concept, which I always look forward to, like maybe someone wrote something that will adjust those intuitions for me in a way that's useful because just to name a simple example, I was probably like pretty squarely an object relations guy for I think most of my grad school, and then I stumbled onto self-psychology, psychoanalytic self-psychology in grad school and like really started to dig into it more. Even in undergrad, I think I was kind of like that too, but I think I really got into like Kohut and those guys in grad school, at the end of grad school, and, talking about the concept of idealizing and, the healthy exhibitionistic self and things like that, it really shifted me because what I came to realize is there are a variety of non-pathological look at me moments that people have. Whereas my prior intuition was there were many, many, many look at me moments people had that were more out of desperation and less out of like kind of, let's call it ordinary wounding, is kind of a way that Kohut would talk about it. So it's like there's a lot of people that have a stronger exhibitionistic sense of self, partially because whatever culture,
Son,
blah, blah, blah.
son, this is going over 90% or 95% of the people's heads that we're talking to.
I'm just saying,
That stuff's great for clinicians. I understand what you're talking to. I've gone to have read all those schools of psychology.
yeah,
You can't be a good clinician without understanding all those areas and others, defense,
yeah,
resistance, ego strength, all kinds of stuff. But for people listening to us, we want to put it in the simple terms for them
yeah.
so that they can understand it.
The simple terms, other than the academic side of it, is that there's especially nowadays with social media and stuff, there's a very conflicted, I think, set of feelings people have about the concept of look at me. And I would actually like to make a case. I'd like to argue specifically that there needs to be a lot more look at me from people. Now, maybe social media is not the best place for that because you're not going to get the kind of feedback you need. However, the reason I was telling you that story about self-psych and why it mattered so much to me is because what I really realized is that I had a bias that people who were interested in look at me were mostly acting out of like real pathology, when in reality, I think there's ordinary look at me that people don't understand. They've
Everybody needs acknowledgement.
yeah,
Everybody needs to feel believed in. These are all basic needs that people have, and we'll talk
mm,
more about those as we go,
yeah.
right? You
Well,
know,
my bias and my temperament is like I don't need much of that, generally speaking.
the
Yeah.
the what I so these are some of the things you guys will hear as we're going, and we'll try and get some of that intellectual stuff out of here. It's a little beyond what we want to get with people we're talking to because we want to make it simple for you to understand. By the way, I used to talk with big words, son. Yeah, concepts, and it's not real helpful. But anyway, so our audience knows one of the things that's most exciting about this for me is not just the ability to maybe help some people understand something, get some encouragement about their life and how to live in this world successfully, but to spend time with my son
Sure.
and hang out with you. That's one of the coolest things about this to me, whether it ends up helping people or not. It's cool to hang out with you and have these talks,
Sure.
because I know you can talk on the level I can talk at, but let's try and keep it simple for people, so they can benefit from this,
Right.
because I'll follow you, but a lot of people will not follow you, with that, what self-psychology, optical relation, stuff like that. They don't understand that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be some people who are curious though. You know,
Well, there
let's
will be.
let's not dumb it down too let's not dumb it
They
down too much.
they may email you, and if they do, we'll try and address a question,
Yeah,
right?
easily.
Yeah, well, yeah, very easily for either one of us.
Well, I think the thing is, and, there's this guy named Eric Weinstein who's a mathematician and stuff, but his approach is I refuse to dumb anything down for anyone, and I'm not him, obviously, but his philosophy that I like a lot, which is I'm going to speak at the level that resonates to me.
I
And
want you to
so,
speak at a level that resonates with the people that our audience are,
oh, I
because
refuse. I absolutely refuse. And the reason's because that I want you to actually understand who I am. I'm not going to fake anything. I refuse.
I know who you are, what you're capable of, son. Believe me,
No, it's not.
intellectually.
I'm talking about the audience. I refuse. I refuse to pretend to be something for people. I refuse. What I'm happy to do is explain things if you think I should explain things, but I refuse to pretend to
I
be something
will.
other than what I am. You know?
I'll have to have you explain things, but we don't want to get off. We don't want to get off into a whole bunch of intellectual stuff on object relations or self psychology.
It was
There
30
may
seconds. Calm down.
What?
It was 30 seconds. No one died. No one died. Everyone's okay.
So for you guys listening, this is what will probably happen on an ongoing basis as we get into a groove with doing this. But like I said, we just want to be helpful, and I want to read our disclaimer again, okay, for people. Yeah, we are very experienced mental health addiction professionals. We are not your psychiatrist, psychotherapist, counselor, psychologist, psychoanalyst, substance abuse counselor, or your health coach, etc. We are sharing encouragement through information and discussion. You need to consult your licensed professional when trying to address mental health / addiction issues. Just because an issue or just because an idea helps one person does not mean it will help someone else. People are complex. Your own professional will hopefully know what is best for you in your situation. We want to make this too. We'll probably have some fun as we go, and I'll probably make fun of you if you're too intellectual.
Okay. That's fun.
And if I'm wrong, you'll straighten me out with correct language for what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like you did today.
Like, I really want things to be technically correct so people understand
I know.
and they don't have to like fact check things or whatever. Like, I want it to be as straightforward as possible for sure.
I know. And I'm sure a lot of people, by the way, are just one last thing. A lot of people are really excited to see and hear us too.
Mm,
Okay, so you know that, and so hopefully we'll have a lot of fun with this, and people can have fun listening to us too, not just get encouragement.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, all right. You want to end this piece?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Encouragement for Living Life. We hope you were encouraged by today's discussion. If you have a question, you can email us at lockwoodwithlockwood@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer it on one of our shows. Hope to see you next time.